and welcome back to Cuckoo for Books. My name is Salva and today I'm going to be doing my favorite books of 2018. Now, the one other time I did this year-end favorite list, I was able to come up with my top 10. I didn't finish a book until about July this year, so I only managed to come up with 7 favorites this year. Let's talk about books, guys. I think as of now, if you've been watching the last 5 videos on this channel, you will know that I really enjoyed Tarabdon by Sarah J. Maas this year. Most of these books I've done a book review of on this channel, so I'm just gonna leave a link down below to all the ones I've done a review on. So if you want to know more about this book, you can watch my review. All I'm gonna say to keep this short, because we got a lot of books to get through, is that this book made me fall in love with the fantasy genre again. And aside from letting me fall in love with the fantasy genre again, it also made me fall in love with Sarah J. Maas's universe again, because it was getting a little dreary. A little bit. This book injected like a huge dose of energy into the series, and I absolutely love it. If we're counting favorite book of 2018 that was actually published in 2018, for that, I would have to go with My Plain Jane by Cynthia Hand, Brody Aston, and Jodi Meadows. This is a comedic retelling of Jane Eyre. I think that's all you really need to know about this. This is their second book. The first book they ever did, these 3 authors, they did a comedic retelling of Jane Grey, a historical figure, and now they're venturing into retelling fictional characters. I really enjoyed this. I was super afraid that they would hit their sophomore slump. You know how like The Hangover 1 was really funny and then they tried to do sequels and it was just like pfft. But this one was just as hilarious. I think I loved it even more than the first book. A lot of the times right now, YA is like just oversaturated with these dark, broody, gloomy characters, and once in a while it's nice to have a series that just focuses on comedy. I would highly suggest this for anyone who wants a little light YA fare. The third favorite book of 2018 I have is The Wicked Deep by Shay Earnshaw, and this is oh man, I mentioned this in a wrap-up video and it took me about this long to come up with a way to describe this book without giving anything away. It is a gothic, supernatural, contemporary novel. I can't say anything more than that because what's great about it is also what can't be said about it, because if you say it, then it takes away what's great about it. It's a complicated book that way, but if you've read it and know what's so great about it, then you can hit me up on a DM and we'll chat about it and I'll be able to like reveal its secrets. The gist of this novel is a couple of centuries ago there were these 3 ladies, sisters in fact, who were wrongfully accused of witchcraft and were drowned, and as vengeance on this little town they come back every year to drown men and to pull them under, and that's their revenge on the town, and it just gets better from that. That's a pretty interesting pitch to me, and it only gets better from there. Like, the pitch is the least interesting part about this book. It's got great writing, it's very poetic, and she paints the picture of this town so well. And despite it being a really thin book, you get attached to all the characters really quickly. Definitely earns its spot on my favorites of 2018 list. Okay, we're halfway through the list. My next favorite of 2018 would have to be, and I think this is on a lot of readers' year-end list for 2018, and it is What If It's Us by Becky Albertalli and Adam Silvera. I'm gonna show off for a second and say it's signed. The authors visited Manila maybe 2 or 3 months ago, so if you want to know how that went down, I'm also gonna leave a link down below to my vlog of that day. This is the first LGBTYA novel I've ever read. I enjoyed it so much for the first time in years. This was one of those books that I was like, one more chapter, it's 1 a.m, just one more chapter, just one more chapter. Super short segue, but I did a review of this and I said one of the things I like about it was I felt like the teenagers in the book talked like teenagers to me, and then somebody commented and said, I actually think they didn't speak like teenagers. I'm a teenager and they spoke way too old for a teenager, and I'm like, oh my god, am I that old already? Like, I'm assuming teenagers talk like this, and in fact that's not how they talk at all. I still think Becky and Adam capture the youngin' voice more so than a lot of contemporary authors out there. I won't mention names. This starts off as a meet cute. They bump into each other at the post office and they try to find one another, and it's a summer romance. The characters are all so lovable. I wish there was a sequel. I just flippin' adored this book, and I know that a lot of people did too, and if you want to hear more about my thoughts, I'm just gonna plug my book review in the link below. Now, as I mentioned earlier, for the first chunk of 2018 I was like in the dark. I knew nothing about YA releases. I didn't know which books were coming out. I didn't know which book series were ending. I don't know what the new authors hullabaloo. So when I started reading again, all I could think about is what book do I want to catch up on the most, and it would have been Lord of Shadows by Cassandra Clare. And I hate this. No, I don't hate this. I don't hate this book. I have so much mixed feelings towards Cassandra Clare because I think just by default, any book that I will read of hers will make its way onto a favorites list of mine because I've been reading her books for almost 10 years now, and I've been so Stockholmed by this series that anytime a Cassandra Clare book comes up, I'll be like, it's amazing, I love it, it's my favorite, it's on my favorites list of 2018. It's an okay book. Lord of Shadows is the second book in her new series, The Dark Artifices. Compared to her first book in the Dark Artifices series, Lady Midnight, it's so. Because it exists, it makes its way to my favorites list because Cassandra Clare has Stockholm Syndromed me. Like, child, I couldn't tell you what happened in this novel. I mean, they go to Fairy, more love triangles, there's, I don't know, Nazi shadow hunters, because it's a book set in a universe I already love and have been reading for the last 10 years. By virtue of that, I love it already, and that's why it's on my favorites list. So to go back to the story of which book did I want to read the most, I went with Lord of Shadows, not realizing that Queen of Air and Darkness, the third and final book in the series, was going to come out this month. But I don't want to read it yet because I feel like it's been too soon, and I'm just gonna go into withdrawal if I try to read it now, but for sure I'm gonna read it soon, and for sure you're gonna see it on my favorites list next year because I am Cassandra Clare trash. The second to the last favorite I have for this year is my only non-YA book on this list, and it would be The Confessions of Catherine de Medici by C.W. Gortner. C.W. Gortner is not a perfect author by any stretch of the imagination. He has his faults, but he chooses such interesting historical figures to write about. He captures such an interesting part of their lives. His descriptions are amazing. When his faults do come up in the book, you just sort of chuckle like, there you go again, being silly like that. Most of the Catherine de Medici books focus on her as a young girl in Italy, towards her marriage, then she bears heirs. Usually the books I've read ends either when she gets married, or when she has Francis, or when the king dies. This book takes us way past that. After her first, her second, her third son is crowned king. It takes us through her whole entire life, and that I think is what makes this one of my favorite books of 2018. I've read my share of Catherine de Medici adaptations or retellings. In terms of lifespan, not one has taken us as far as this novel, and that's what I really appreciate. And what I love about C.W. Gortner's books is that he doesn't just write about his historical figures' personal lives, but also he writes a lot about the environment they're in. Political intrigue, religious upheavals are found in his book, and he's able to weave them well. His one fault, I've mentioned this time and again, is he does not know how to handle the passage of time right. Every time I come across it in his books, I just chuckle. I'm like, there you go again, skipping 3 years in the span of a paragraph. Like, what? I love historical fiction. I love Catherine de Medici as a character, she's not a character, as a historical figure, and so I really enjoyed reading this book, and I think this is my favorite Catherine book that I've ever read, period. The last book is also the last book I have read for 2018. I'm working on a book now, but I doubt I'm gonna finish it before January 1st, so technically this is the last book I've read for 2018, and it is Girls of Paper and Fire by Natasha Ngan. This is another fantasy, and unlike many of the fantasies I've shared in this video, it is a new one. It's new. It's, I think, the first in a series. It is Eastern based. In the author's note at the end of the book, she mentions it's based on Malaysian culture and Malaysian history. It's set in the world where there are demons, half-demons, and humans, and that's a very simple way of describing the book. Of course, it gets a lot more complicated than that, but anyway, cheat sheet version is there's a demon king, human girls serve as his concubines, so we follow the story of one girl who gets concubined. Is that the word? She becomes his concubine, not by choice. I think my only issue with this book is that I feel like it was hiding something in terms of its love story, why it wasn't marketed as such. I think it would have benefited a lot more had it marketed the love story as it really was, other than being just really vague about it on the book jacket. But again, it's such a refreshing take on fantasy. I just said I was Cassandra Clare trash, but we need new worlds to explore in fantasy, and I think this is a really nice world that I would love to explore. I am not going to do a book review of this just yet because this is actually a book that I read because I'm part of this book club on Goodreads, but it's also on Twitter, but that's how I joined it. And I think we're all going to do a live show in January, or we're going to release our book reviews at the same time. So that's how I got into this book, and I really enjoyed it. I love the world building. I wish she explored it more. Definitely has room to grow. I think just because of its originality and it's a breath of fresh air within the love story and the world building, that's what makes it my last favorite book of 2018. And that about does it for my favorite books of 2018, and I guess that about does it for my videos for this year. It was such a great year to get back to reading. I'm so happy. I feel like reading-wise, mental health-wise, I'm in a much better place than I was last year, and even the year before that, I'd say. I hope to keep it up throughout 2019 and actually bring you 10 books next year. You can follow me on my other bookish adventures on Twitter at Cuckoo for Books, on Instagram at Cuckoo for Books, and also at Salva Villarosa. Please subscribe, and I will see you guys very soon next year. Bye, guys!